I'm currently writing a book about, or finished a book about, sort of the history of undercover journalism. It's going to be called American Pravda, and the thing about it is that there is a SPL code of ethics that journalists traditionally use, and it's sort of a utilitarian calculus. Is the thing that you're exposing more important than using the technique to gain the information? We would argue that the stories that we uncover are of extreme public interest. Extreme public interest. So the reason why the media investigations we're doing are so important is because the media arguably has more power than Congress. It has more power than the legislature. It informs the culture. So they say politics is downstream from culture, and culture is downstream from data. Culture is downstream from Facebook, Twitter, New York Times, CNN. So these institutions, these sacred cows, these groups that inform us, absolutely it's justified to use hidden camera and false pretenses, if you will, to go uncover the truth. Now, the difference between us and the media is, we use deception to get to the truth so we can distribute the truth. I would argue the media may lie to the people by being so upfront, at least in the action. So the difference between us and the media is we don't deceive our audience. We always tell the truth to our audience, but by parroting the talking points of the establishment, you may be telling the truth to the establishment, but you're lying to the people by parroting what they tell you. So it's our responsibility in a democracy to tell the truth to the audience, and in order to do that, we have to use the hidden camera. Our audience and the people that consume what we expose is the people who don't have a voice. So when we go after these behemoths, these sacred cows, these leviathans, the New York Times, the paper of record, CNN, for whatever reason, all these institutions sort of gang up on us. We had the Washington Post gang up on us, a guy named Paul Farhi, who did an article, and his headline was "What James O'Keefe Left Out" of his CNN piece. Now, the irony was the thing that he claimed that I left out, I didn't actually leave out, and he had to print a massive retraction. But my point to Paul was, Paul, why are you attacking me? What's your motivation? Why would you attack me for exposing something that a CNN producer said in his own words? Why would you attack me for that? And I'd have to speculate, but I think it speaks to a deeper problem in our country, a very deep problem where, to use the words of Jack Nicholson in A Few Good Men, they can't handle the truth. They don't want the truth. The truth is manifestly damning to their narrative. And they have so much invested, these media conglomerates, they have so much invested in the narratives that are sort of held up on stilts that can crumble at any moment if the truth comes wrecking them down. So there's all these deeper issues. I think that has nothing to do with false pretenses or hidden cameras. That's an excuse, because the journalism as a whole is a device. Reporters use techniques far more unethical than me saying that I'm a pimp in a housing group. The things they do on a daily basis, disguising who they are, using anonymous sources, all the things that they do are far more deceptive in the scheme of things than the sort of pretenses that we use to collect their information. I think, all human beings typically, it's not about reforming the behavior, it's being compelled to do so by virtue of being afraid of being exposed. So there's a sort of virtue in doing the right thing. And what I've found is all these cast of characters we've exposed, you duplicitous people who say one thing in public or another thing in private, it's always about the fact that they were exposed and how to prevent it from being exposed. So the New York Times, was it Clifford Levy? I think it was Clifford Levy. He put out a memo in that summer and said, "Be careful what you say to people. There's someone posing as a college student." It wasn't be honest. It wasn't tell the truth. It was don't get caught. The teachers union in New Jersey said, beware. There are people creeping around. It wasn't stop sexually abusing children, stop saying the N-word in class, which is what they were doing. It was don't get caught in the act of doing it, which is a common refrain. And it's a beautiful thing to behold, because you're sort of taking virtue and you're smacking them in the face with it like a big piece of salmon. You're saying, like, you got to reform your behavior here. And they're like, well, but you're the evil one for exposing us. And it goes back to the political philosophy of these people, which is a sort of social agenda, right? Because you have truth or veritas, and then you have like postmodernism. and this whole notion of like, well, there's a specific political and social agenda that our efforts are engineered to achieving, and any facts outside of whatever facts fit that go towards that agenda are not allowed. We don't allow that, and that's what F.A. Hayek wrote about in The Road to Serfdom, when he said any information which doesn't contribute to that specific social policy trajectory are not to be discussed. They're not to be allowed. They're to be prohibited. The only way we're going to change the hearts and minds of the people is to do things like that. And what we call the series Pravda, and the book is called American Pravda, because the difference between the Soviet Union and the United States is that I think everyone in the United States, they don't know they're being lied to. At least a lot of people still read the New York Times and think this is the paper of record. I must believe this. This is factually, it has to be the case. And I think we're at the tipping, we're sort of almost at the tipping point, but we're not quite there yet. But I think we're right about there. Whereas in the Soviet Union, everyone knew what it was, but they would talk about it privately. They were unwilling to do anything about it. I think we're getting to that point in the United States. I, of course, have lived through it for 8 years. I've been jailed. I've been attacked. I've been defamed. I've actually settled defamation lawsuits. So I think that I've gone through this turbulence, but I think we're finally at a place in American society where we're almost there at the tipping point, and pretty soon we'll be past the tipping point, in my opinion.